that introduction, I will go ahead and turn it over to our presenter for the day, John. And once again, thank you.
Yeah, I've got a lot of sunshine. I'm in sunny California right now, San
Oh, that's
Francisco,
right.
at the RSA conference. I'd like to get started here on the presentation. All right, welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk about zero trust, why it's important, and some thoughts around it. It can be daunting. There's no doubt about it. But what I'm going to try to help do is simplify some of it and give you a couple of tips if you've not already implemented zero trust. And I've seen from the attendee list several are existing JD Edwards or excuse me, existing GSI clients. With that in mind, many of you are aware that we are technologists, we're application specialists, but as a part of our application side of the house, we're often involved with security, cybersecurity, application security. And our presentation today is going to show a little bit of that. We're going to have a little bit of a twist on that versus traditional network security. So, the biggest question, if you've not studied, don't know what is zero trust? And it was conceptualized not very long ago by a fellow named George Vinderbag and Dr. Chase Cunningham. They were both with Forrester Research at the time. And they wrote a white paper. Mr. Vinderbag has not written many books on it, but he did a white paper and he's got several friends that have written on it. The thing to remember is that zero trust concentrates more on the intrusion detection side of the house, intrusion prevention side of the house, not the intrusion detection. A lot of CISOs, old school CISOs will say that intrusion detection is mandatory, intrusion prevention is optional. But boy, you can sure save yourself a lot of hassles if you just keep people out of your system. So it does make sense to roll both of those. And we're really going to be concentrating on the intrusion prevention. So think of zero trust as a strategy. A lot of people think of defense in depth or the security onion are types of strategies, and loosely they are, but zero trust is a strategy. And think of trusting anyone as a vulnerability to your system. But so if you trust no one, you have no vulnerabilities. Of course, the only way for your computer system to be 100% secure is for you to shut the power off. So with 100% security comes 100% no functionality. So it's really not an option. So, it's your job to protect as an IT manager, security manager, CISO, for whatever reason you're listening here, it's partially your responsibility to protect against those vulnerabilities. We'll briefly talk about Mr. Vinderbag's 9 things to know about zero trust, 4 of them in the design of the system and 5 of them for implementation. And if anybody's been paying attention to the news in 2021, there was a presidential mandate by President Biden's side that says all federal agencies have to improve cybersecurity. And that was followed up in February of 2021, that move is towards zero trust. And a lot of companies are scared by zero trust because it's like, I got my network, it's in place, GSI included. Our network's in place. Man, we got to go to the zero trust model. There's a boatload of work. And I think there was a lot of resistance to zero trust. And some of this opened that up, especially in the government agencies, because they just really have no choice. So some of the top reasons for zero trust, and I'm not going to go through all of these because we'll be here all day if we were to talk about all 10 of these reasons. That's not what this session is completely about. But be it as it may, you need to the hackers, the ransomware attacks in the last 5 years have really taken off. A lot of it by, you know, human error, people being tricked into giving up their credentials. Stakes are a little higher, money's a lot higher, data exfiltration has come about. So even if they break into your system and you decide not to pay the ransomware, um, you know, still potentially faced with them selling your data. They don't have to get any money from you. They can sell your data if it's valuable enough. So basically, these are some of the reasons that, to go with zero trust. A lot of new things changing, and you'll have your own reason, just as everybody has their own implementation of zero trust. So John Kindervag basically says there's 9 things you need to know in order to implement it. 4 of them design principles. Focusing on business outcomes. It's like, what's your end goal? Do you make treadmills? Do you make, what, you know, do you sell services? What is it that you sell? What are you protecting? Design from the inside out. And most of us old school network administrators, me included, really started in the day before you really even thought much about security. It was an afterthought, nice to have. But when we did finally start things, we were protecting at the perimeter. That's the outside in. And zero trust is start from the inside out. What are your things? Wrap your security around the things that are important to you. Is your database important to you? Great, but maybe your website isn't. You don't need to be as secure there. Concentrate on who needs access, who and what needs access, and, you know, don't exactly go about the least privilege, but basically no privilege unless you've been given privilege. And also a design principle, which I actually kind of think is as much an implementation, is that locate all log traffic and, you know, basically look at a SIM, but also don't be thinking just about inbound traffic. You need to watch outbound traffic as much as inbound traffic, because that's a good way to detect if you've been penetrated. I'm going to turn off my video because I see the glare in the back. Sorry about that, guys. Pretty day out in the back, and if I were to tip my laptop, I got a nice view of the city of San Francisco. So anyway, here's the 5 implementation principles. So the other 5 things you needed to know out of the 9. You know, define the protect surface. What are you protecting? Do you need to include physical controls as well as electronic controls? Map the transactions. How do things flow in and out? Hopefully you have some of this, but if you don't, there's books on how to map and do transaction flows and what you should be looking for. Then, you know, architect the zero trust architecture. And the interesting thing about the Kindervag method about zero trust architecture, they're saying don't you know, eat the whole elephant at once. You eat the elephant one bite at a time. And they suggest starting with, you know, your non-business critical systems. You may feel desperate. You want to get it over with right away, go from 0 to 1,000 miles an hour in 30 seconds, but you're not going to get there that way. You'll fail. And the architecting the zero trust architecture is taking the approach, start with some non-business critical systems, start rolling them in, testing, seeing what people think about it. There is going to be people resistant. Gosh, I had access to that all the time before, and now I don't. It's a problem, is it? I mean, if you've thought out your transaction flows and your architecture and your trust policies, the 4th item, it shouldn't be that big of a deal for you, because everybody will have what they're supposed to have. And you can basically do tabletop exercises and monitoring access. And then the final stage is the ongoing monitor and maintain. You will, you know, during the life cycle of the zero trust implementation, you will start with lower end systems, and then you'll move up to what is referred to as the crown jewels, things that are business critical. Then you do this 2nd generation critical, and then any any remaining critical things. You just follow a good project flow. So zero trust is an architecture. It defines a security model, design principles that we described, cybersecurity management strategy. It eliminates implicit trust. So zero trust, it sounds like least privilege, but maybe it's slightly different. Maybe it's more secure. It should be more secure. Just say nobody can get into anything unless we say they they can get to. It allows users full access, but only to the bare minimum they need to perform their jobs. And even that, I'm going to show you a little later, could be a problem, but you need to start with the underlying architecture and basic human access. This is the NIST zero trust logical components, and it's what NIST says is important. Not everything is going to be used by you. Basically what you do is you assume that everything is untrusted, and you have policies and resources, and you define those trust relationships. I put a link to this. It's a very good document. If you like to follow NIST guidelines, it's a great way to do it. It may not be that you want to utilize every and all principles. To say that zero trust is a framework, I think would be a fallacy. It's not really a framework. A framework would be everybody follows this guideline, and that may or may not be the case. So don't think of it as a framework. Think of it as just guidelines. And here's some of the and I got the word framework in here. Some of the zero trust cybersecurity framework. These are, Mike, we're going to have to change that word to components, because that's really what it is. Showing, like intrusion detection, prevention, these are the things that you people in our group, all IT people, work with on a daily basis. Endpoint
I'll take the blame.
protection.
I'll take the blame for that. About framework, I was trying to come up with
Oh,
another synonym.
well, you could think of it as a framework, but I think a framework puts a little more rigidity into it that would, kind of scare people away. So that's why a lot of the people that I've been talking to say, just try not to think of it as a framework, because then, you're going to feel like you need to implement every piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily. Every implementation of zero trust is going to look different because you have different business needs. So again, some of the core principles, multi-factor authentication. I hope all of you are using multi-factor authentication. It's not perfect, but it sure is a good start. Multi-factor authentication has and can be penetrated. Certain types of MFA are more secure than others. And a piece of hardware token might be slightly more secure than a phone token. A token is going to be slightly more secure than a phone, which can be hacked. So it does consider least privilege access to a certain degree. Bare minimum, device control. Microsegmentation has always been an awesome network design concept. And I think if you follow things like the cloud adoption framework, if you've got resources in the cloud, microsegmentation is normally just a part of it. Like if you have perimeter security and you have cameras and those type of devices, you probably ought to put them on their own network, so that if somebody breaks into your main system, you at least have physical security, or vice versa. If somebody breaks into that, they don't get the keys to your crown jewels. So microsegmentation is critical. Continuous monitoring and verification. The biggie there is, have you implemented a SIM? Do you have a SIM? Do you need a SIM? Many super small companies don't, but I'd say if you're a mid-sized company, you need some kind of log aggregation. If you're going to be able to especially track if you've been if you're going to be hit by ransomware. I mean, a lot of companies will report that they've been, the attacker's been sitting inside their system dwell time for 6 months. And if you've got good monitoring and you monitor your outbound traffic, you can't prevent somebody from trying to get in, and they may even truly get in, but you need to catch them. And that's why I initially said that intrusion detection is a must. Dwell time is what can kill you, where they can get data that they shouldn't have access to, get your private information. So I'm going to start to transition a little bit from the concept of zero trust, which focuses a lot on network devices. It focuses on microsegmentation, MFA, all those things I mentioned that you absolutely have got to have, firewalls. And I have talked to a couple of IT managers that they think, hey, that's the adequate. You've got, using DNS protection, using an EDR solution for endpoint protection and all that. However, most common attacks today are phishing campaigns, right? It's where the hackers try to trick a user that's been given access into the system. Do any of those top level things actually matter if they've got your credentials? Maybe MFA helps, but as we said, MFA has been broken. There are, there's a lot of comfort in that, but depending upon your network design, it may not be enough. They might be able to once they're inside, now they're not hacking at the perimeter, they're hacking from the inside out. So you need to start thinking about your business systems, the things, the crown jewels, and what you're protecting. Do you have a database server? Do you have web servers? Do they talk to each other? Do you have an enterprise application like JD Edwards or SAP or Dynamics? Do you have SaaS-based applications? And think, well, what happens? Just think of GSI. I'm GSI's Chief Information Security Officer. I have a lot of access. So my regular account doesn't, but my admin account does, and I'm designated by our construct as to be a person that has to have the keys to some of the castle. But I use a separate account for that, an admin only account, so that when I do get hit, if I do get hit, my regular user ID doesn't have complete access. So you have other tools, right? You have Office 365, Oracle, middleware, WebLogic. You have APIs, etc. So this is where I wanted to transition from traditional network architecture to more application protecting, whitelisting, ring fencing, so that even if a hacker breaks into your system, they'll be highly restricted from navigating around, because I've taken zero trust to the next level, the inside out. There are many tools. Some are free, others have a cost. I'm going to highlight some of those. So think about it. Somebody decides they're going to target John Bassett. They get my ID, they get my password, they clone my phone, and they're able to get MFA, and they're in. So what can they then do? Well, if it were traditional, they could then install maybe some ransomware onto some of our key systems and start gathering data and start exfiltrating data. But because we use one of these whitelisting tools, they wouldn't be allowed to install that program. They would immediately be blocked from installing it. So let's quickly talk about something. Traditional approach is not strong enough. Network security is tending to protect from common vulnerabilities, known vulnerabilities, whereas this whitelisting capability, it basically assumes that you have no idea what the vulnerability is. It's just assuming you can't do anything unless unless the execution has been allowed. So it's making it much more difficult for zero-day and ransomware attacks, just like you probably have switched from a traditional antivirus to an endpoint detection and response, because the traditional antivirus really only looked for common vulnerabilities and did not look for bad behavior. The new EDR solutions also looks for bad behavior and helps prevent you at the perimeter. The application whitelisting is the same way. It provides complete visibility into the applications and processes on your host systems, whether those hosts are servers or laptops and mobile devices. It allows your security administrators to fine tune those policies, update those whitelists. So here's some common tools. Mike, thanks for organizing this. This is a good slide. Threatlocker is probably what you will find as one of the PC Magazine editor's best, or many different sites, because of how good of a comprehensive tool and how easy it is to use. It has an extensive learn mode. You don't just put these tools on somebody's computer and your IT help desk is going to be swamped and overwhelmed. So you can go into a learn mode and build models of things. You might have a Windows server model, you might have a Linux server model, and you might have a MacBook model, and you might have a Windows workstation model, and then you can clone that. And then as people add or update tools, they have to go through approval processes. AppLocker, it's included with Windows, Windows Server 2010 to Windows 11, Windows 10, Windows 11. It's a little more complicated to manage. It is not, the price is pretty good, but you're going to spend more in management time than it would be than if you would buy some of these others. Just a few others, because not every tool is suited for every reason. For instance, Threatlocker does not yet have a Linux-based solution. I met with them yesterday. They promised me it's 6 months out. I talked to them about their Android and iOS devices. It's in their roadmap. They do not yet have it, but there's a few others. McAfee Application Control has the Android and iOS. So it depends on what you're looking for. So these are the top 6 solutions that we've run into. GSI has partnered with Threatlocker, so being fully disclosure. The reason why we did that is because we felt that GUI, that learn mode, was just an incredible advantage to us. So the learn mode has made the deployment of this a lot easier for us to, and what do we protect? What does GSI have to protect? Well, we use Office 365, we use SharePoint, we use a bunch of different applications. We have developers that are coding in various programming languages. We have MacBooks, we have some Windows servers sitting in Azure. And we split our models into 3 different models. We have a Windows server-based model. We haven't implemented Linux yet, but we rolled out the learn mode and deployed that. We have Windows 10 and 11 workstations, and we have MacBooks. And so our 3 are the Windows servers, the Windows desktops, laptops, and the MacBook laptops. And when we get a new machine in, it will take that model, and sure, there's some administrative overhead. If I want to install, a new program, like let's say I want to install PuTTY to get at some of our Linux machines sitting in Oracle Cloud. I just am not allowed to do that without requesting permission. And we have an administrator who can then do some forensics on it to compare it against like 25 virus databases to see if there's any viruses in it. You can even execute it at no charge in a Threatlocker sandbox. So if you say, well, I don't know if it's okay or not, but let's run it and see if it works. Okay. Could screw up your own system if it's nefarious. So they have a sandbox mode for you. And that's why we went with them. They just seem to be helpful. But Threatlocker has this capability, and there's actually a new capability as well, a new operations manager. So allow listing, the same thing as blacklisting. If you're going to be working with the Department of Defense, CMMC, allow listing is a required required service. I have a slide for each one of these: ring fencing, elevation control, storage control, and network access control. I have a slide for each one, but I wanted to highlight them at the top. So files to execute and blocks everything else. It gives the IT department control over the environment quickly, and it blocks malicious software. And actually, for audit, if you have audit and compliance requirements, also keeps track of that. So you can get some analytics. Here's the programs we're running. Here's the ones we blocked. Here's the ones that are nefarious. And it can help you with some of your compliance. So, and again, it'll give you the, it's been blocked from executing. And then if you're the end user, you can click the request access, and then it goes to the cloud-based Threatlocker console. That administrator will get a notification that he has to look into it. End users initially get a little uptight about this, hey, I'm used to just, installing whatever I want and getting it done right away. So there can be some grief from the user community. It's grief, but it's also safe. So ring fencing is somewhat a part of application whitelisting. It's a little more granular control, and it only allows you to do certain things within your applications. Let me give you a for instance. Let's say you've been granted access to Microsoft Excel, so you can get into Excel and spreadsheets. But let's say somebody emails you a spreadsheet and you save it, and it has a macro in it. Well, with ring fencing, you can decline running certain features inside of Excel. So even though Excel is allowed, macros may not be allowed. And that's what ring fencing is about. It's further granularity inside of the application. What can you do once you're in the application? Elevation control is somewhat simple. Basically just allows your administrators to grant like admin privileges for a short period of time to allow them access to get their programs installed. So let's say the president of the company says, hey, I need to get this done pretty quickly, and you determine that it's safe. You can just give him elevation control on a temporary basis. So it's a productivity booster. Might be less safe than, if you totally disabled it, you'd probably be a little safer, but you may find in your organization that that's useful. Storage control, and this is something that GSI is, we haven't rolled out yet, but we will be. We're seeking CMMC, and with CMMC, you have to lock down USB storage devices. And the nice thing about Threatlocker is it doesn't eliminate the use of the USB port. It just requires storage to either be disallowed or approved only, and encrypted. So things like your mice, USB mice, and all that will continue to function, but will prevent you from, I don't know if you've seen any of those key lockers or data exfiltrators. You plug a USB in, and next thing you know, it's installing ransomware on your machine. Well, with the storage control, you can limit that. Network access control. Many of you may be already doing this anyway, but they've added the network access control, kind of giving you some firewall capability. to kind of see where requests are coming from. What ports need to be open on what device type of thing. We're not currently using this at GSI. We've had that taken care of from a different layer. So I think that's pretty much the webcast. I knew it wouldn't quite be an hour. So it was the first time we've decided to do this presentation. We'll do it again. Mike, is this where you take over, or?
Yeah, for some reason it's not letting me get back to there we go. Okay, I'm a host now. Yes. Yeah, this looks like let me
Still says
fire
I'm
up
sharing my screen.
Yeah, let me switch over here. It's not.
I was gonna share my
Yeah.
screen. I had a book I wanted to show everybody that I picked up. I got signed today or yesterday on Zero Trust. It's
Oh, I think I just took over. Are you I think you're still on video, aren't you?
no, I
Oh,
can't do video.
okay.
It's all right. Just
Yep.
continue.
Yeah,
I'll tell everybody. I picked up a
go
book
ahead.
yesterday called. I picked up a book yesterday called Zero Trust, or excuse me, Project Zero Trust. It's by a guy named George Finney. He's named one of the top 100 CISOs in the United States in 2021. He signed it, and he could have rewritten this book, Zero Trust for dummies, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I thought it was just really basic for people just starting to go down a zero trust architecture. But I do find the one thing that is not in there is enough concentration on the business systems. And as GSI, our business system people, it's what we look for first. So if you go through this big application security rollout, and then somebody gets to your database server, stops it, and encrypts the database. What good was all of that security? Um, it's one approach that we don't see. But if you want a high level how to get started, give you some tips and tricks for implementing a complete zero trust network architecture, that's a good place to start. So,
well, yeah, we'll make sure to include that. Maybe throw that in the chat, and we'll include that on the page, the on-demand page. And actually, this slide is a nice segue into the Q&A, because one thing when we were building this is, we have an hour. How do we talk about zero trust in an hour and feel like we give you something worthwhile? So, and we're like, not everybody may feel that they understand, even after you spent a half hour talking about it, what zero trust really is. So no matter if you got something from this, maybe you got something or you didn't, we can help further the conversation. And, for some of you, depending on where your networks are, if, did this webcast illustrate what we wanted it to, the importance of deploying zero trust cybersecurity strategy today for the threats of tomorrow. It's something that is, like you said, it's not a framework. It's flexible. And so, for some of you may understand, cyber threats are becoming more sophisticated. These 3 points I think are made pretty much anywhere. Maybe, you think, okay, it sounds great, but I don't know if our systems are ready to do something like that, or you feel like, you're on-prem more, and, it just depends. And then help us understand why. So, afterwards, you can contact John, or we have also a sales rep, Jim Grimm, who has been, we just hired, he's been selling cybersecurity services for a while, but his role is to help our expertise, the engineers, the people John is in charge of, to provide more services to GSI's clients who are seeing these threats are becoming real, and it wasn't, people's profile wasn't just raised after Ukraine last year. These things have been out there for a while, and we see um, that happening. So one thing I want to do is just, here as we wrap up, we're going to get to the Q&A, but the educational resources that are available for cybersecurity, it's a growing library. We have plenty of them for ERP2 on our new and improved website. We have webcasts, newsletters, our YouTube channel goes back years. And but we're really open, especially as we expand our blogging, really open to topic suggestions. So please do if you have some. You can find this on our website that's been updated. We're obviously on social media. And you will be getting a survey after this. And this especially will be helpful for us, as this is kind of a new webcast. Is, what do we need to cover next time? Maybe we do a workshop on zero trust that's a little longer. But if you participate in that survey, you will be entered to win an Amazon gift card. And seeing how, there are only 30 people registered, not everybody will do it. You have a good chance of winning that. If you we will provide that link to you. So let's go to the Q&A. One question, John, I think that came up was is how do I know, my systems, is there like there are two different ways this question is phrased, so I'm trying to, is there like a baseline capability? Is there some sort of like level of infrastructure or employee count or something that are some rules of thumb to implement zero trust? Or is it something that maybe it's more appropriate to do zero trust but only parts of it? What do you tell people who almost who come to you and say, I've heard of zero trust, but how do I even know if it's appropriate for us?
Oh, Mike, that's a very good question. And it is something, it is something that you have to determine for your business, for yourself. But with that in mind, generally speaking, many companies that wish they had implemented a zero trust network after they've been through a ransomware attack, small, my son-in-law does some support work for a small construction company, and they were penetrated. They had like 5 office people, and maybe 30, 40 contractors out in the field doing work, and they were penetrated, and their QuickBooks files were taken off site or offline and encrypted, and they had an Exchange server. They had a firewall in place. They were taking their patches. One of the patches showed for the Exchange server showed as successful, but it wasn't. That really wasn't a problem until the firewall company updated the firewall and left port 389 open long enough for this system to be, this Exchange server to be penetrated. The Exchange server, I should say, not penetrated, but started talking to the command and control. So there was a double fault here. There was an Exchange server patch that was taken advantage of and malware installed, but that didn't do anything until the firewall patch was. So I've gave you an example of a small business. They probably had less than 50 people in the whole company, and probably only 5 or 6 people that actually touched the computer, and they were down for 4 days, which really wasn't that bad. But their system was really being used as a jump off point. The hackers didn't really want anything from them, but they were trying to clean themselves up. They used it to jump to another company, and so that they could come in from the outside the United States into the United States via this small construction company and then, start attacking others. So would they have benefited from a zero trust policy? Yeah, absolutely they would, because if let's say that firewall patch, um, you know, or that they took and they left that port open, well, that means they got in, but they just wouldn't have been able to do anything once they got in had they adopted zero trust. So I would say that zero trust should be for everybody.
Mhm.
And that's my opinion. It's just an opinion, and you may disagree with me on that, but I haven't seen a company yet, even a two-person mom and pop show that shouldn't be thinking this way. Now, maybe they can't, maybe they don't have the money to pay somebody to implement it, but if you have some capability of allowing no trust, it's definitely needed. It is affordability. What's your risk register look like? If you have a risk, if it gets penetrated and you have to rebuild your system, it takes 3 months. Does that matter? It might not, right?
Mhm.
Might be a small company say, all right, we'll go out and just continue doing what we need to do until we get things back. We'll get to it over a slow period in the business cycle, and it's not that big of a deal. It's not a matter of if you're going to get hacked, it's a matter of when. I was seeing yesterday, I saw a statement from the vice president of Microsoft, who goes around the world talking about artificial intelligence of all things. That's big out here. Imagine that, right? There are like 1,200 password breaches every second right now. And if you think about that, it's like, what if it's your company, and it probably is. Somebody's probably trying to get in. You got to, with zero trust, you try to prevent that from happening.
That's a great segue to the next question is zero trust, has it become a more chosen platform because of the sheer volume of attacks, or because of the cleverness of the cybersecurity of the cyber attacker? And the context I'm asking that is, when I first started helping you with marketing the practice, and I obviously had to understand more about cybersecurity. And one thing that floored me is, I've been aware of the importance of cybersecurity. I had no idea that the posture has gone from, we need to be prepared if we get attacked, to we need to be prepared when we get attacked, to we're probably going to get attacked today, to what it is today is we're getting attacked multiple times a day. What that was that stunning. I remember that. Is zero
Mhm.
How does zero trust, it sounds like it's a reaction to both the technology that is being used to try to infiltrate, but also the sheer numbers. And that's something that wasn't done, it seems like, maybe before. How would you, ask that? Is it more of a response, or is it more of an evolution, I guess?
Oh, I guess I'm thinking of those two words as the same.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you want to think about the evolution, what's coming out of RSA is the evolution of something like this, is that the artificial intelligence, along with threat management, is actually going to put a stop to this mess.
Hmm.
I know I've been saying for a few years, in 10 years' time, we're going to have less of a focus on this, because everything we touch is going to have a zero trust thought process built into it from the very beginning, which is a new concept. So I guess to answer your question, I would say it's more evolution, as the threat actors are improving their capabilities, the protections have to evolve too. So I'm going to go with it more of an evolution, just
Yeah,
just
sure.
because of I'm being swayed by what I'm hearing here in San Francisco.
Well, and I think that brings up yet another segue to to one of the last questions we'll have is that, you know, mainstream media certainly loves to cover um, uh, the cybersecurity, and because it does affect everybody from your mother-in-law to your coworker, and it could be, an engineer with tons of years of experience could be affected like a CEO and whatnot. But I think, do we see one thing I think that the mainstream media loves to jump on is taking the AI and wondering, oh, is this now going to become the next cybersecurity threat, without really thinking through what it could be. However, I do think there is some interest in that. Is that, a lot of times when we see ransomware attacks, or it's just, we can spot them easily because it's bad writing or bad grammar, or the graphics are almost there but not quite. Like, I a lot of times think, if they had spent 2 more minutes getting the grammar right, they may have fooled me, and that I think, does are we going to see AI, or, not being used to figure out a way to penetrate your network as much as it is just to further refine the attempt to have a good ransomware, or really pretend to be somebody else? Or, is that just something you're not worried about? It's much ado about nothing.
Oh boy, I don't sleep real well at night thinking about this, so I'd always worry about it. More than anything, what I personally think is setting the business aside, business side of things is like what are my aged parents doing?
Yeah,
What are my kids doing? What are people that I know that are running businesses where they don't really know and understand cybersecurity? How are they protecting themselves?
yeah, yeah.
Maybe I sidestepped it a little bit, your
No,
question.
well, I think a lot we don't know, and but
Yeah, I
well,
think so. I think, and the big thing about AI is there's, the vice president of Microsoft is embracing it. I don't, is that her job to say that? It's like you got to worry about data privacy and all that, and it just,
mm-mm.
I don't know. I got a little bit of a sci-fi interest in my soul, and I keep thinking of the Tron days and the Battlestar Galactica, where you have cyborgs, where the AI turns into a machine that wants to do away with humans. So that's the
Well, I mean,
extreme, right?
and we've talked about this. We've talked about this before. I'm one younger generation from you, and it exists in the Terminator and the Matrix, and there's always that AI, because it's people fear uncertainty, and people, and why
Yeah.
wouldn't you have AI is pretty
There's
uncertain, but
there's a lot
where
of
it's going to go.
there's a lot of fear in AI. There's a lot of capability in AI. But I do know that what they're saying at RSA is that AI is developing faster than they ever anticipated. Of course, I don't know why you would miss the boat on that,
Hmm.
because it's self-generating prophecy there. And once they roll that into quantum computing, you're going to have a very, very fast solution, and they're saying that the protections are going to be able to keep up with the attackers now,
Hmm.
and that's a
Well,
good thing.
yeah, well, and speaking of good things, it is why don't we wrap up with a reminder
Yeah.
that,
Thanks for
yeah, well, and just a reminder that this video will be available on demand. Everyone will get a link to when that is posted. If you have additional questions about, obviously, your network now or the potential, feel free to get a hold of John, or Jim Grimm, who's in our office as well. And really, just that is pretty much it. We appreciate everyone for joining us. John, you any last words you like to say, or anything in general, wrapping up from what you see in maybe what you've learned about zero trust, kind of in preparing this, that all businesses, is there one thing, if there was one thing you want people to take away from the potential of zero trust helping a small business, what maybe would that be?
Um, just keep in mind that protecting the network may not necessarily be enough. You need to look at protecting the applications too. So just think of it as, zero trust to be a combination of your business systems and the security surrounding it.
Thanks again for everybody for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.